Hello again, friends. Welcome into Gamecock Central Radio. Emerson Phillips joined by Collyn Taylor today. It's the first time that Collyn and I have gotten together here on Gamecock Central Radio, so we're looking forward to talking Gamecock football today with you. Collyn, how are you getting along?
I am awesome, man. Trying to stay cool. It's been a little hot in Columbia the past few weeks, so just getting ready for football season to pick up soon.
Yeah, it's that time of year, man. It's been hot as Hades here, about 95, 96 degrees the last few days. So it's par for the course. We've come to expect that here in South Carolina. They say we're separated from the heat of Hell's Kitchen by a screen door down here in South Carolina. So we're used to this kind of heat. And it's also talking season, as Steve Spurrier used to put it. So that's what we're doing today. We're talking Gamecock football. We're 40 days until the Gamecocks kick off the 2017 season, year 2 of the Will Muschamp era. And people are excited, Collyn, because Will Muschamp had such a young football team a year ago, and a lot of the key players are back this year, particularly on offense. So there's reason to believe the Gamecocks are going to score some points this year and just have a better football team overall than what they had last year in Will Muschamp's first year.
Well, absolutely. I mean, I think I asked Deebo Samuel, one of the return wide receivers, down at SEC Media Days, what he expects this offense to look like. And he said that they expect to have weapons all over the field and be able to score points in bunches. And when you look at the depth chart, I mean, there's really not a reason to discredit that. I mean, they returned Deebo Samuel, obviously, who was one of the best receivers on the team last year. They used him in a lot of different ways. Bryan Edwards, who kind of came on strong as a number 2 wide receiver to Deebo in his freshman season last year. And then they have Hayden Hurst and Casey Crosby at tight end. And both of them have been really, really good. I think Hurst was second on the team with 616 yards receiving last year, only behind Deebo, who had 783. And then Casey Crosby led the team, or was tied for the team league with 4 touchdown passes caught last year. So they return a lot of weapons, and plus they got that Bentley kid throwing the ball back there, who's not half bad. So they got a lot of reason for optimism for sure in that lineup. And then obviously they have Rico Dowdle, who had a pretty good freshman year last year, and A.J. Turner as well, along with Tyson Williams, who's a back who had to sit out last year for transfer. So when Deebo Samuel says that they have weapons all over the field, it's really hard not to believe him on that, because they see it every day. They know how explosive this offense has the potential to be heading into this season.
We're 40 days from kickoff. South Carolina will take on NC State in Charlotte, 3 o'clock kickoff on Saturday, September the 2nd. So we're going to focus on the offense today, Collyn, and let's stay with Deebo Samuel for a moment. Junior wide receiver, 6 foot, 215 pounds, out of Inman, South Carolina, played at Chapman High School. He was a fantastic high school football player, and he's really blossomed into a fantastic receiver for the Gamecocks. Had a breakout game in the bowl game last year, 14 catches for 190 yards. The 14 catches tied a Gamecock school record, and it was a bowl record as well for the Gamecocks. So he's coming off the best game of his career and going into his junior year, 3rd year in the program now. Deebo Samuel named to the Biletnikoff Award watch list. The Biletnikoff Award each year goes to the top pass catcher in college football. So, he's one of the stars in the making in the SEC and one of the players to watch for the Gamecocks coming into 2017. Preseason first-team All-SEC as an all-purpose back, and he was also second-team preseason All-SEC as a kickoff returner by Athlon. So he anchors what figures to be a very good wide receiver core for the Gamecocks. You mentioned Bryan Edwards. South Carolina will have some newcomers that could contribute this year as well. And you talked about Hayden Hurst and depth at the tight end position, so it's not just wide receivers that the Gamecocks have got that'll be catching passes this year. It's a big group, and there's talent there, Collyn.
Well, absolutely. And you kind of going back to Deebo for a second, he's not just a wide receiver. I mean, they use him all over the field. He's a kickoff specialist. He's a kickoff returner. He was really instrumental in that jet sweep they ran last year in Kurt Roper's offense. He rushed for 6 touchdowns. He ran for 6 touchdowns. He ran for more than he caught. And he gained 102 yards on the ground over last season. They used him a lot in those short yardage, close to the goal line situations. He can get around the edge and just power his way into the end zone there. So he's a versatile guy. But after him, you have Bryan Edwards, who's kind of the thunder to Deebo Samuel's lightning. He's a bigger guy. He's kind of more physical, 6'3", 215. And then Hayden Hurst, who's he's Jake Bentley's safety blanket. He's the guy that's going to be there to go up and catch some balls for him. Hayden Hurst joked for a little bit at SEC Media Days. He said, I tell Jake all the time, when he's in trouble, just to throw it up, and he's going to bail him out. So there's a good relationship there with Hayden and Jake Bentley, who is kind of still learning a little bit in the SEC, still kind of getting his feet wet, and to have weapons like that around the field is certainly good for a young quarterback who's coming into less than a full year as a starting quarterback in the SEC.
Let's stay with wide receiver for a moment here, Collyn. Talk about some other players who could contribute this year. You know, Randricus Davis was a factor, battled some injuries last year, wasn't on the field as much as maybe he would have liked, but certainly he showed some potential. And then we got Ortre Smith and Shi Smith, a couple of freshmen coming in this year. Talk about those three and anybody else that may contribute this year.
Right. So they had three wide receivers that saw some time last year, didn't really start. But Randricus Davis is the guy you mentioned, played 2 games, caught for 45 yards. Chavis Dawkins is another guy that can maybe fill his role into find his way into the slot receiver position for some games. Started 1 game last year, caught for 69 yards, played in 11 games. And then Terry Guger, 3 starts last year, played in 11 games, caught for 66 yards. Is one of those guys that could see some time as the slot receiver as well, or in that rotation. And then obviously Ortre Smith, who is highly touted coming out of high school, really, really good player, played at Wando, and just was all over the field, really versatile. Bigger guy, too. He's 6'4", and weighs a little bit more than Bryan Edwards did. So they could probably use him in that slot receiver position, too. And I know there's a lot of buzz surrounding Ortre Smith. This going into preseason camp and going into the first part of the season as a guy that could potentially have a breakout year this year if he stays healthy.
What are the expectations for Ortre, Collyn? As a freshman coming in, I'm cautious against lumping too high of expectations on him, but clearly Gamecock Nation feels like, this is a kid that could come in and make an immediate impact. Physically, he's very gifted. He's an in-state product. Folks know a lot about him, having played at Wando, finalist for Mr. Football in South Carolina high school ball a year ago, and a well-known name in high school football circles over the last couple of 3 years. So how is he going to fit into the scheme, and how much playing time will there be for him this year?
I think that if he stays healthy, there's going to be a lot of time for him on the field. He's a guy that can make an impact early when he comes to campus. He was a 4-star receiver coming out of high school, and when you look at him, he's the prototypical SEC possession wide receiver, a guy that's going to go up and go get balls and out-muscle defensive backs that, South Carolina really hasn't had over the past few years. I mean, now they have it with Bryan Edwards, but they're getting more of these guys that can make catches in traffic and make catches in the middle of the field when they're maybe, double teamed or have safety help over top. And he's a guy that I think if he can stay healthy and continue to progress like the coaches expect him to progress, can have a very good freshman year, and then also, continue that and parlay it into a very good collegiate career at South Carolina. He seems like he's going to be the guy that is the go-to weapon over the next few years once Devo leaves and Bryan Edwards leaves school, and Ortre could be the number 1 wide receiver in the next year or two.
Yeah, the Gamecocks have got talent. They've got depth at wide receiver. And, Collyn, one of the players that I was tremendously impressed with last year was Bryan Edwards. Certainly don't want to leave him out. You talked about him a little bit, but I wanted to talk about him a little bit more. I think at times it was easy to forget that he was a true freshman last year, and he did not play like it. He played like a seasoned veteran, particularly toward the end of the season. Terrific hands, the ability to go up and catch the football on top of or over defenders. I just thought the potential was tremendous for Bryan Edwards last year. So, how much is he going to improve this year, and what can we expect from Bryan Edwards in 2017?
Right. He's a guy that hit the ground running. And when he got inserted into that offense, was nicked up for a little bit last year, but played in 12 of the team's 13 games, caught for about 600 yards. He's a guy that I would put a lot of expectations on this year because he had such a good freshman year. Because he's another year into the offense with Kurt Roper and Will Muschamp there. Will Muschamp has pounded into the local media and his players' heads that the biggest development for players comes after year 1 and before year 2. Is that's when they get more comfortable. The game kind of slows down for them. So if Bryan Edwards was playing like that in his freshman year, and now the game's kind of slowing down and he's more comfortable, I would look for him to probably have a pretty big year if he continues to develop like he developed near the end of last year.
Gamecock Central Radio, Emerson Phillips with Collyn Taylor. We're 40 days until kickoff. The Gamecocks take on NC State Saturday, September the 2nd in Charlotte. Kickoff set for 3 p.m. on Saturday, September the 2nd. We're focusing on the offense today, and we got a lot more to come on today's podcast here on Gamecock Central Radio. We invite you to download the Gamecock Central Radio app. We've got this phone app that's on the App Store and on Google Play. You can then subscribe to our podcast, search for Gamecock Central Radio. You'll find us on iTunes, SoundCloud, and other popular services, or just visit radio.GamecockCentral.com. The app is free. Our podcasts are free. Download the app today. Collyn, a lot of the reason that folks are optimistic about the skill players that we've already talked about, the receivers and Hayden Hurst and the tight ends, is because the Gamecocks are set up at starting quarterback, and that has not been the case the last couple of years. You know, there was some uncertainty the last couple of years who would start at quarterback, and I think one of the biggest reasons for comfort going into 2017 for Gamecock football fans is the fact that there is no disputing who the number one quarterback is. Certainly there are questions about who the number two quarterback might be, but as long as Jake Bentley stays healthy this year, the Gamecock offense should be in good shape. How does Bentley improve? Collyn, it was amazing to me that Bentley should have been a senior in high school last year. Didn't play the first 6 games, and when he became the starter after the bye week in the middle of the season last year, he showed flashes of brilliance. He made some throws that we as Gamecock fans have not seen around here in a long time. So people are very optimistic about Jake Bentley heading into year number 2 for him.
And the stuff he was doing as a 18-year-old they were jaw-dropping. The throws he was able to make, these back shoulder fade routes, these leading passes. I mean, the things he did were not indicative of him being a high school senior, or shouldn't have been a high school senior. He seemed very comfortable with the playbook from what he did on the field and what he said going into preseason camp this year. He feels even more comfortable now that he's had an entire offseason to work on it and study this playbook and learn his hot reads and get more comfortable with his wide receivers. And I mean, the way he's talking and the way that Muschamp talked about him, they have a guy they think they can really win with at South Carolina, because kind of like Ortra, he's this prototypical SEC quarterback, 6'3", 220, with a cannon for an arm that can run the ball when he needs to. He has a bright future if he can continue to play the way that he played. I mean, he looked like a seasoned guy last year, and that's reason for encouragement if you're South Carolina offensive coordinator Kurt Roper.
As good as Bentley was in the pocket, Collyn, at times, he was pressured. He was hit a lot last year, and he showed an ability to run the football. I certainly would not characterize him as a running quarterback, but he can run the football. When the protection broke down, he showed an ability to escape and turn negative yardage plays into positive yards, and that was a real positive aspect of his game, I thought, last year. So with the questions at depth at quarterback, Collyn, will there be an attempt by Kurt Roper and the Gamecock coaching staff to limit Bentley's running at least to some degree in 2017? They've got to keep him healthy this year, Collyn. Will he run less?
I would think so. They did a lot of RPOs last year with the run-pass option, to where Jake could hand the ball off or throw however he wanted to do it. I think protecting the quarterback's obviously number one thing, regardless of depth at quarterback. But this year, definitely more so. I think you're going to see more pocket passing, a lot of quick slant screens, very 3-step drop kind of things, to where you're not really having to hold the ball a long time if you're Jake Bentley and worry about maybe a pocket collapsing or a blitz coming to get you, and then you roll an ankle and you're out for a game or something like that. I think that you're going to see a lot quicker offense, getting the ball out of his hands as quickly as possible to limit the time that he has to hold the ball in the pocket.
So Bentley didn't play the first half of the season last year, and the Gamecocks played 6 games, entered the bye week. There was talk that Bentley might redshirt. Made no sense to me at the time why Bentley would skip his senior year of high school to come to South Carolina in a redshirt. And sure enough, after the bye week, Will Muschamp names him the starter, and the Gamecocks played better football and seemed to take on a different identity with Jake Bentley as a starting quarterback. And he already ranks first in school history in completion percentage. Collyn, 65.8% a year ago in the completion percentage department for Jake Bentley. Threw for 1,420 yards and 9 touchdowns. And Bentley named to the Davey O'Brien watch list last week. That award goes to the top quarterback in college football. And this is the one award that fans can vote on. You can vote at voteobrien.com. voteobrien.org. That's voteobrien.org, voteobrien.org. So Jake Bentley completed a lot of passes, and this is what people like about him, Collyn: presence in the pocket, command of the offense, and leadership skills.
Mm-hmm. And I asked Hayden Hurst at SEC Media Days, just what about Jake Bentley makes you confident that, you're handing the keys to your offense to a 19-year-old. And Hayden Hurst said, point blank, he doesn't carry himself like a 19-year-old. And Will Muschamp echoed the same thing, is that Bentley stepped into the starting quarterback role and took over as a leader on this team because he was so mature for his age. And he seems like a natural leader, a great motivator in terms of making sure guys are doing what they're doing, lifting guys up, being encouraging, especially in summer workouts and weightlifting sessions. So he's a guy that players look up to, and players, he sets an example for not only the younger guys, but some of the guys that might be older than him, some of the guys that might be behind him on the depth chart. They're going to work just as hard because they see Jake working that hard. And Hayden Hurst said there'll be times when, Jake Bentley will go and watch film with Hayden Hurst, and when he doesn't need to, just because he wants to spend that time. He wants to get as acclimated with his players and with the other teams that they're watching as possible. So he's a guy that has a good head on his shoulders. He's very cognizant of what he's doing at all times, and he's from everything that the players have been saying about him is that he's just a great leader of the team and can really inspire guys.
All right, so all of these attributes combined with just the natural ability that Jake Bentley has got heading into his second year as a college quarterback, first full year as a starter, part of the reason, along with these pass catchers that we talked about earlier, that people think the Gamecocks are going to have the ability to score a lot of points this year. Collyn, I thought Bentley starting at the start of the second half of the season last year, obviously it coincided with Rico Dowdle, the freshman running back a year ago from Asheville, moving into the starting lineup as well. Dowdle was nicked up in the preseason last year. He didn't benefit from a full camp. He didn't play at all the first 6 games of the season. And then in Game 7, he started the football game along with Jake Bentley. They joined the Gamecock starting lineup together, and I think Dowdle's presence improved the running game, and Dowdle helped Bentley. Bentley helped Dowdle. The two kind of went hand in hand, and I thought Rico Dowdle was incredible as a freshman a year ago. 5'11", 220 pounds. He had 3 100-yard games, ran for 764 yards on 133 carries last year, highlighted by a 226-yard rushing effort in the win over Western Carolina last year. That was the 6th highest single-game rushing total in University of South Carolina history. Ran for some tough yards in that win over Tennessee at home last year, which helped propel South Carolina to a bowl game last year. The Gamecocks went from 3 wins 2 years ago to 6 wins last year, got them into a bowl game. And I thought Rico Dowdle obviously had a major hand in that. A.J. Turner contributed a lot last year, Collyn, and this year the Gamecocks will have the addition of another new running back, and it's going to be Tyson Williams, who's originally from Sumter County. He's a South Carolina product, played at Crestwood High School, originally went to the University of North Carolina out of Crestwood, played 1 year with the Tar Heels, and then transferred to South Carolina. He sat out last year, physically about the same size as Rico Dowdle, and a similar style of runner, a physical type of running back, Collyn, that I think Gamecock fans are going to like right away.
Right, and I think Rico Dowdle and Tyson Williams are kind of the same breed of running back. They're shifty. I mean, the top half of their body could go one way while their legs are going the other, and it's just so hard to tackle those guys. The only action that Gamecock fans would have seen Tyson Williams in was the spring game this year, and there was a kind of a big Final Four game going on at the same time, so I don't know if they got to see him, but I was there, and I was really, really impressed with what he did. I mean, he would make one cut, and he was through a hole in the secondary, and before you know it, it was a 20-yard run. This kid, he can play, and adding him to a backfield with Rico Dowdle in it is going to be just as lethal, I think, because Rico showed flashes of being really, really good last year as maybe not a feature back with, A.J. Turner also in there, splitting reps. But coming into this year, he's listed as the number 1 starter along with Williams and A.J. Turner in a lot of the or situation.
Yeah.
But Rico Dowdle should be the number 1 running back going into game 1 against NC State. And I think there's a lot to like with him because he is so shifty. He is. And also can run for power when he needs to as well and pick up those gritty yards between the tackles, and if it's 3rd and 1, you don't feel bad about handing off to him.
Rico Dowdle, another exciting player for Gamecock football, just a sophomore, named to the Doak Walker Award watch list last week, and that's the only major college award that requires all candidates to be in good academic standing. So a feather in the cap for Rico Dowdle being named to the Doak Walker Award watch list last week. So that brings us to the offensive line, Collyn, and this is, I think, the number one area of concern for Gamecock football fans and probably for the coaching staff as well coming into 2017. The offensive line might have been the biggest disappointment of the Gamecock football team a year ago. The coaches going into the season last year were talking up the offensive line as the strength of that unit, and I don't think that proved to be the case. What did you think?
Yeah, I didn't think so either. I mean, it was really, really hard for quarterbacks to kind of gain their footing. They gave up 41 sacks last year, which is just not, what you want to see. I think that was the most in the SEC last year. They struggled to block, edge rushers, and that was their downfall. They really didn't get a push up front. And Will Muschamp's tried to remedy that this offseason. He preached being more physical on both sides of the ball on defense and offensive line. And I think that's a real big focal point for this team with so many weapons that, weapons are great and all, but unless you can block for the quarterback or block for these running backs, there's really, you kind of waste these weapons if they don't have any holes to run through or, lanes to pass in.
Yeah, and that was never more evident than in the Clemson game last year. All these players that we're talking about played in that Clemson game, but because Bentley was running for his life or because the pocket collapsed around him play after play, the Gamecocks were not able to move the football at all against a Clemson team that went on to win the national championship. So lots of reason for optimism and excitement going into 2017, but some questions on the offensive line. Collyn, talk about starters on the offensive line. The depth chart has been released. Who are some of the new faces there, and who will be the stalwarts of the offensive line?
All right, so when you talk about the offensive line, you can't not start with Zach Bailey, who's not only one of the best linemen in South Carolina, but one of the best linemen in the SEC. Has played out of position a little bit throughout his career, but kind of moved back home to right tackle, where he should succeed there. I mean, he succeeded at center. He's played well at guard, and now he's kind of making his way back to where, he kind of fits more naturally, which I think is going to benefit him in terms of knowing what the offense, knowing how the offensive line, the rest of those positions play. Alan Knott's going to be your center. He's a senior offensive lineman, started at center last year. He's a guy that can play well. He's a little streaky. He was a little streaky last year. But I think also in another year in Kurt Roper's offense is going to help him out too, knowing the lingo and the kind of the phrasing that Roper and the rest of the offensive line uses. Corey Helms is listed as one of the starters heading into preseason camp at right guard next to Zach Bailey, in between Bailey and Knott. He struggled at times last year, but also showed some moments of sheer power where he could bulldoze defensive tackles and defensive ends. So I think there's some optimism there. And then on the left side of the line, you have, Malik Young, who's a junior, who should probably get the start there at the first few games of the season. And then Donald Stanley at left guard, backed up by DJ Park. I think that's left guard is probably your most contentious position just because, both of those players have played before. Stanley got hurt a little bit last year. So I think DJ Park doesn't have a lot of ground to make up with Donald Stanley. I think that's going to be a fun position to watch kind of, evolve and develop in preseason camp to see who actually plays game one against NC State, which, you could go in as the number one guy and often, on the depth chart heading into the, week one, but if you don't play well, then you could lose your spot.
Yeah.
And then at left tackle, Sedarius Hutcherson, he's a redshirt freshman, listed at number 2 behind Malik Young, left tackle. And so I think that's another guy that if he continues, his development and maybe plays the way that the coaches are expecting him to play, could see some time, maybe if, Malik doesn't play as well as he needs to, or, goes down, or that Sedarius Hutcherson could be a good, rotation player for South Carolina in terms of offensive line.
All right, so some position battles going into the start of preseason camp, which will be July 31st. We're about a week away from the start of Gamecock preseason camp for 2017. There will be some position battles on the offensive line and some in-state products starting and playing on the offensive line for the Gamecocks. You got Zach Bailey from Somerville, Donnell Stanley from Latta, DJ Park from Dillon. I know Gamecock fans enjoy seeing in-state products contribute, and there will certainly be a South Carolina in-state flavor on the Gamecock offensive line this year. So, Collyn, great discussion today. We're just starting to get into Gamecock football talk as we are 40 days away from the start of 2017 Gamecock football. South Carolina and NC State, Saturday, September the 2nd in Charlotte, 3 o'clock kickoff. It's going to be hot up there, more than likely. And then the week after, Collyn, the Gamecocks will head on the road, one of their longest road trips of the year, to open SEC play. Game 2 will be at Missouri, and that game will be a 7 o'clock kickoff on the second Saturday of the season. So, a couple of weeks on the road, or at least away from home. I know the NC State game is a neutral site, but it'll be, 3 weeks into the season before the Gamecocks finally take the field at Williams-Brice.
Right, and it's a pretty good stretch of time, before getting home. But these are two really tough opponents in terms of history. I mean, NC State has a really good defensive line that should be an early test for that offensive line we just talked about for South Carolina, who struggled at points last year. So, NC State's a good early test for South Carolina. Will Muschamp likes that. He likes knowing his team's made up early. And then you have to go, out west and you travel halfway across the country to play your first SEC game. And Missouri, while they've been down the past, year or two, has always given South Carolina fits. Those games always seem to go down to the wire. Everyone remembers that Connor Shaw comeback against Missouri in overtime with that, fourth down pass to Bruce Ellington and the doink field goal. And everyone knows that Missouri's come to South Carolina and won some games. So, two tough tests early. Those two teams really seem to play well against each other. So, South Carolina coming out of the gate does not have a week off for the first couple weeks of the season. So you're gonna know right away what South Carolina's made of over the first 2-3 weeks of the season.
NC State and Charlotte to open it up, and then at Missouri for the SEC opener, and then a couple of home games at Williams-Brice, Kentucky on September the 16th, and Louisiana Tech on September the 23rd before the Gamecocks hit the road for another long trip to College Station, Texas, to take on the Texas A&M Aggies. So couple of long road trips for the Gamecocks in the first 5 games of the season, and we're going to talk plenty more about this and other topics as we get closer to kickoff. 40 days until kick. Collyn, great talking with you today, and we look forward to doing it again soon.
Awesome. I enjoyed it. 40 days can't get by fast enough.
Collyn, give us your Twitter handle.
Oh, absolutely. It's at Collyn Taylor. So COLLYNTAYLOR.
Yeah, don't forget.
Smushed together.
Okay, don't forget Collyn, COLLYN at Collyn Taylor. Hit Collyn up. Talk Gamecock football with him. You can hit me up at Emerson Phillips on Twitter. We'd love to hear from you. Feedback, questions, input, always welcome on social media and on Twitter. Thanks for being with us. For Collyn Taylor, I'm Emerson Phillips, and this is Gamecock Central Radio.